back to the Simple Sports Podcast. It is I, Capo, here again. Episode 6, talking about Week 2, Sunday's games. Today is Saturday, so I'm getting these picks out for you. We'll talk about them all, talk about some DraftKings tips. I'm not going to do the full lineup like I did last week. I'm just going to talk about a few guys that I like as I'm going through the picks. I think that's a little bit easier, so take some notes on that. Try to make some money. I made some money last week with a few guys that I picked. And we're going to try to do the same thing here this week. So we'll get through those. We're going to talk about Thursday Night Football in just a second. Guys, please don't forget to like and subscribe if you are on YouTube. If you are elsewhere, download, subscribe to the podcast, send it to your friends. And like I said, let's get to make some money. So Thursday Night Football. First things first, that's the Baker Mayfield that we need to see every single night. Maybe a little variation. Obviously, the games will dictate a little bit more as to him throwing the ball a little bit more versus running it as a team. So, but overall, he looked sharp. Kevin Stefanski started moving the pocket around, getting him out on the move, and he looked crispy. Made one big mistake, threw the pick at the end with the corner that fell off, which it was just a bad decision. The corner fell off into that route. Who's to say if he ever actually saw him? You know, you can't tell seeing from his eyes, but just looking at the film, not a good decision to make that throw. But nevertheless, listen, everyone makes a mistake. It's no big deal. People like to pounce on him because it's the Browns and it's Baker Mayfield, but you know, there were a lot of mistakes last week. Anyway, overall, I thought he looked great. Chubb looked great. Kareem Hunt looked great. Odell, Jarvis Landry was questionable, looked pretty good. Austin Hooper, so they look great. Defensively, there's a lot to be desired in Cleveland. A lot to be desired. Pass rush was just fine. Myles Garrett made his splash plays as normal, but we have to keep in mind and context that they are playing the Bengals. And so I expected more, especially defensively. I saw enough offensively to be satisfied as far as where their trajectory is. But there was a lot to be desired defensively, and those games are not going to go that way against better teams. They're just not. So they got some work to do, but getting the win is the most important thing, especially so early in the season. Still too early to panic. I usually don't start swaying or moving off my preseason predictions or thoughts until week 3, week 4, probably week 5. And so nothing has changed for me for the most part. For a few people, there are 4 or 5 teams that I've made my decisions on already just based on how they started the season. And mostly because that's the type of team that they have been for the past few years. And so for it to continue is no surprise. Teams like the Dolphins, teams like the Jaguars, although the Jaguars did surprise me as far as beating the Colts, but that's not going to be sustainable. The Colts, I don't think, are very good. A lot of people had them winning the division, making the playoffs. I don't see it. To me, I'd be shocked if the Colts won 7 games, 6 or 7. Phillip Rivers is done, man. Marlon Mack is out. Jonathan Taylor will get his chance to start, but I don't see it happening. Anyway, I've gone so far off subject. Baker, that's the Baker Mayfield we need. Joe Burrow, dude is legit. Listen, he threw the ball 60-plus times. I didn't realize it until the very end of the game when he crossed the 50 mark that he had thrown it that many times. I think Troy said it throughout, at some point, it's like, this is attempt number 50 coming up. It certainly just, maybe to my eye, just wasn't really paying attention, but it didn't look like he threw it that many times. And maybe that's because the Bengals trust him. And so we trusted him watching the game. And therefore it didn't dawn on us, or at least it didn't dawn on me. But overall, I thought he looked good. Look, he still made some rookie mistakes, had a few sacks that he needed to avoid. He didn't. A few times he could have thrown the ball away that he didn't. But it's his second game with no offseason on a bad team. So for him to do what he did, I thought he was excellent. The Bengals have found their guy, I believe. I thought he was going to be just what he is. When they drafted him, so no surprise to me there. But the dude's legit. Unfortunately, he got drafted by the Bengals, and sometimes bad things happen to good people. So Best of luck to you, Joe Burrow. Sorry you got drafted by the Bengals. We'll talk about some DraftKings stuff. Like I said, as we make the picks, we will go through all the picks for all the games coming up here in just a second. As I said, guys, please don't forget, like, subscribe if you're on YouTube, leave some comments, share this stuff. Download the podcast, subscribe to the podcast, share it with your friends. Get in here and let's make some money. Let's get to the picks. All right, so last week we made our picks, all the games, and aside from the, we did pick the Texans and Chiefs. I didn't do it on the podcast, but I had picked the Chiefs in that game. So we went 9-7, 56% win percentage. I'm keeping track of all the picks. I don't necessarily bet every single game, but I do want to provide my predictions for all the picks, just so I like to keep track of what I'm doing and all that good stuff. 9-7, not bad. First week, it's super hit or miss, especially in a year like this. There was a few that I felt more confident in, even though we lost. For example, the Washington Eagles pick. If you play that game 10 more times, I don't think that happens. Same thing with the Bears and the Lions. I did pick the Bears, but they gave up a 17-point lead in the fourth quarter. The Lions did, so we got lucky there. And then you have games like the Colts and Jaguars. Jaguars should stink. They're supposed to stink. They do stink, I think. And they beat the Colts. Colts were getting or had to win by 8, and they stunk it up big time. Bengals and Chargers, what are you going to do? Bengals +3. We took the Bengals. They hung in there tight. Field goal kicker misses the field goal. Who knows what happens in overtime? Maybe they get the ball, go down and score. Maybe they don't. It is what it is. One on the Cardinals and the Niners. Nice. Broncos and Titans, we took at -2.5. Unfortunate. It is what it is. Steelers and Giants +6. So we had some good picks there. I mean, 9-7 week 1. I would love to have gotten a few of those. That, like the Titans Broncos game, that was it was ugly with the kicking. So what are you gonna do? But for week 2, we're gonna get into it. Hopefully this week we get a little more down the right path as far as picking the right games. You get a little bit more information, a little bit more film, a little bit more data. You got injuries that happen. Rookies get the jitters out with the first game. New guys on new teams get their second. So there's a lot of stuff going on. So we're going to start with the Rams at the Eagles. Rams getting 1.5 at the Eagles. I love the Rams here. A few things concern me, right? There are two things that you have to pay attention to, especially in week 2, right? So one thing is urgency, especially teams that are supposed to be good. They don't want to go 0-2. The Eagles are supposed to be good, supposed to compete for the division. Same thing with the Rams, but the Eagles are the 0-1 team. And one thing I've always loved is a competent 0-1 team coming off a loss, especially playing at home. Eagles are playing at home. And it's not the same home field advantage, but it is somewhat still there. It's hard to bet against urgency. You'll hear me say that a few times here today because there's a few teams that I'm not so comfortable with the pick per se for that very reason. And this is one that I am on the fence about because I think the Rams are the better team, which is why I'm picking them. But it is hard to bet against urgency. And the Eagles have urgency. The only reason I'm betting on the Rams here is the +1.5. Basically, they need to win by a field goal. I watched that offensive line with the Eagles. I know they're getting a few guys back. In fact, they're getting a lot of guys back. Miles Sanders is scheduled to play. Lane Johnson, Jason Peters, Fletcher Cox, Deshaun Jackson, all listed with no status. So the Eagles are going to be better across the board. Javon Hargrave is set to make his debut. So defensively, they will look to create some pressure with all those guys on the defensive front. I just don't trust their offensive line against Aaron Donald, who destroyed the Cowboys offensive line last week. And, who's to say which is better with all the injuries that they had. And now the Eagles have some guys back. So is Aaron Donald going to be able to dominate like that again? It's hard to say. But what I do trust is the offense of the Rams. I feel like McVay has settled in. He's gotten the right staff in to handle the defense, and he, even in just his play calling, appeared a lot more comfortable with what he was calling. And that's not to say he wasn't comfortable with Jared Goff before, but I just felt like he put the game more in the hands of his offense and more creativity, more moving Jared Goff around, and not so much worried about managing the game through the offense so that the defense could keep up. That's just what I saw. I think that the Rams plus 1.5 at the Eagles is a solid bet here. Bucks at home versus the Panthers minus 8.5. The Panthers defense is just the polar opposite of the Saints. Okay. And so they go from potentially the best defense in, certainly the best defense in their division, potentially the best defense in the NFC, maybe you could argue. And so they go from that to perhaps one of the worst, if not the worst defense in football with the Carolina Panthers. You watch the film with Tom Brady, it suggests a different story than what a lot of the media and what a lot of people would have you believe happened. He made some excellent throws, 6, I think, deep ball throws, which led the league last week in week 1, or I think he was tied with maybe Aaron Rodgers or someone like that. Tom Brady looked fine. He made one critical error, one error that's still up for debate. The way I saw it, it looked like Michael Thomas is supposed to get in that zone in the middle. Middle field is open, middle field open. He needs to attack that middle. But then the concept of the play wasn't quite up to snuff, at least not to me. There's no one to attack the outside, so that safety has no reason to fall off to the outside. So I don't know. I'm not in the locker room. I don't know a whole lot about football, right? So what do I know? But it didn't look good at a glance. But if you watch the film, the Bucks were right on par in that game. The pick 6 killed them, obviously. But like I said, the film suggests an entirely different story. I think the Bucks roll here minus 8.5. It's a lot of points, but I think the Panthers are not very good. Ronald Jones is one of my picks this week to have a really good week against this Panthers defense at running back. He'll see a lot more action. And Scotty Miller, depending on what happens with Chris Godwin, doesn't look good. Doesn't look like he's going to play. He's still way up in the air. Scotty Miller looked excellent. We heard Tom Brady talk about him in the offseason a lot. He went to him a lot last week. And, he's a nice security piece for Tom. It's something that he's familiar with. It's something that we were concerned about, right? Him going from New England to Tampa, the weapons, even though he's got better weapons, you still have to build chemistry. Well, he hasn't played with Scotty Miller either, but Scotty Miller has a skill set that Tom Brady is very, very familiar with. The big play receivers like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, he's really not familiar with those guys. He only had Randy Moss for a year and a half, and that was it. Gronk is a big play tight end, but it's just not the same as a wide receiver. You got guys that are getting way down the field consistently, and that's just not Gronk. It never was Gronk. Now, he could get down the field, but again, you're talking about the difference between Mike Evans getting down the field and Rob Gronkowski. And Rob Gronkowski looks like the Walking Dead out there. I don't know. Maybe it was just week 1 trying to get back into the flow of football, but he did not look good. O.J. Howard looked like the much better tight end. Probably is the much better tight end at this point. So, nonetheless, I like the Bucks here to roll minus 8.5 at home versus the Panthers. Up next, Denver plus 7 at the Steelers. I love the Broncos here. They didn't play great against the Titans. Titans didn't play great against them for all that matter, but whatever. But the Steelers didn't exactly play great against the Giants, at least not offensively. They didn't impress me offensively, to say the least. Now, defensively, they were amazing. In fact, outstanding. And Big Ben came around later in the game as it progressed, but he wasn't exactly sharp either. Looked a little stiff, which is, makes sense. He's an older guy, big guy, been hurt a lot. And he got banged up early, actually. He showed up on the injury report this week for the Steelers. I think it was a thumb or elbow. I don't remember exactly what it was. Wasn't anything that's going to keep him out of the game or anything like that. It's just he got nicked last week. You saw him get, I think someone fell on his ankle or knee maybe. Saw him limping around. Played through it. Played okay or played fine. No big deal there, but just something to keep an eye on. He's missed time before. Obviously, we saw him miss last year, but he missed time even before then. And it's just something to keep an eye on. I believe the Broncos will be able to provide much more resistance to the Steelers than did the Giants. They're just a better team than the Giants, flatly. So that's not an issue. I don't think they're going to win. In fact, I doubt that they win. But 7 points is far too much for me against this team. They put up some points last week, or they put up some sustained drives last week. It was it was a little bit of a sloppy game week 1 in Denver to open the season, but I think they'll be a much better test for the Steelers than the Giants were. Obviously, Von Miller is out, but they also have Philip Lindsay out. Mark Barron, the safety, is out. Sutton is questionable. Their left tackle is questionable. Garrett Bowles, AJ Bouye is obviously out with a dislocated shoulder. So a lot of injuries on their side. Steelers have some guys out as well. Two offensive linemen, I believe a guard and a tackle, are out this week. James Conner banged up. Benny Snell looked better anyway, which, by the way, is another DraftKings play. Benny Snell, loved him last week. So I like the Broncos to cover +7. Don't necessarily know if they're going to win that game on the road at Pittsburgh with a tough defense. Cowboys -4 at home versus the Falcons. The Falcons defense is atrocious. And here we go again with the betting against urgency. I don't think the Falcons have any urgency. I mean, they do, but for what? They suck. Their quarterback's not very good. He's the king of stuffing that stat sheet. And defensively, they couldn't stop a college team right now. I love the urgency with the Cowboys. Don't love the team. Let's not get it twisted here. But Cowboys at home, -4. It's not too much for them to overcome. I think they score late and cover. I don't love it because the Cowboys defense and the Falcons can score. So it could just be a close game down to the wire, depending on who makes the last mistake may win. And the thing is, the Cowboys do make a lot of mistakes. So this is high upset alert potential here with the Falcons' ability to score. And they do have a pass rusher, okay? It's not Aaron Donald. We saw what he did last week, but they do have a legit pass rusher. So we'll see. I'll take the Cowboys -4 at home, but I don't love it. 49ers at the Jets. Now, this one I do love. I don't care about anyone. I heard I don't remember who it was I was watching. Maybe it was Jason McIntyre on Colin Cowherd's show. Listen, I don't care anything about anyone saying that the 49ers should be on upset alert here versus the Jets. We are talking about the New York Football Jets, okay? +7 for the 49ers at New York, I guess at Jersey, whatever. Listen, nothing here is going to get me to bet on the New York Jets to win this game, especially not against that defense that is, listen, it's not what it was last year, but it's still good enough to dominate the Jets, who is riddled with injuries. Jamison Crowder is out. They got a bunch of guys out. They lost all their best weapons that they had last year, and Le'Veon Bell is out. So anyone that is picking or betting on the Jets this week, I need to speak to you. I really do. I think you need help. And you should seek help immediately. If you're betting on the Jets, you may as well take your money outside, piss on it, and then light it on fire, because that's basically what you're doing. Buffalo, -5.5 at the Dolphins. Same as above. I don't get all the hype around the Dolphins. Yes, they got Tua. Guess what? He's on the bench. I don't think he's going to be that great anyway. But regardless, even if you do think so, he's not playing. Ryan Fitzpatrick is playing. And guess what? He's not very good. That's why he's on his 15th team. He's great in spots. If there were any backup quarterback, if you said I could have any backup quarterback in the league, give me Ryan Fitzpatrick. You know why? Because if Ryan Tannehill for the Titans went down for 4 weeks for whatever reason, and we had Ryan Fitzpatrick as a backup, I would think we could potentially go 4-0. No, we could go 0-4, but we could potentially go 4-0 with Ryan Fitzpatrick. I think at worst case scenario, you can get out of that 500 and you'd be just fine. But he's not a starter. We saw it last week. He turned back into Ryan Fitzpatrick. And listen, they let the Patriots, who aren't great offensively, they're going to do what they need to do to win the game. But they couldn't stop them. They ran all over them. And guess what? The Colts or the Bills are going to do the same thing. It's the same team, basically. Great defense, quarterback that can run, and a running game. What are we talking about here? Buffalo, -5.5. Miami Heat is a real thing. Playing in Florida in this time of year is a real thing. I don't think it's going to be enough for them to overcome the Bills, and I don't think it's going to be enough for them to cover this. I'm concerned with Brian Flores just slightly. Look, it's only week 1, but they look confused against Cam Newton. They didn't really look like they were prepared for it at all, which, how could you be? He's with a brand new team in a brand new season with no offseason. So that sounds idiotic to say, and yet at the same time, there didn't seem to be any movement towards progression as far as stopping them. From first half to second half, from first quarter to third quarter, it looked the same from start to finish, and they didn't look like they adjusted at all. So didn't trust that. Too many guys just flatly missing assignments, not setting the edge. For example, a few guys that look confused as far as who they should take on the option. It's week 1, so I'm not going to overreact in that regard. But my point is, I don't get all the heat or the hype around the Dolphins. And Josh Allen versus the Dolphins has lit them up. 913 yards, 10 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 61% passing completion percentage, 102 QB rating, 318 yards rushing, and 3 more rushing touchdowns. So if you're a DraftKings player, there's another play for you. Josh Allen versus the Bills. But I like the Bills here, -5.5 in Miami. Up next, the Vikings at the Colts. Vikings are getting 3 points in Indy, the poop factor, because I don't think either of these teams are very good. I picked the Vikings to win. But after what I saw last week, I was already skittish about it, but I believed in them more than I did the Packers, which was probably my first mistake, considering one has Kirk Cousins and the other has Aaron Rodgers. So I'm off the Vikings, but the Colts are even worse, and the Vikings are getting +3 points against Kirk Cousins or against Phillip Rivers. Kirk Cousins is just a better quarterback right now. Rivers look like old man Rivers. It's week 1. So I have to be fair, right? I gave Tom Brady a million excuses, so I have to give Phillip Rivers a pass for week 1. Not a pass, but, I'm not going to kill him just yet. It's week 1. But Tom Brady didn't lose to the Jags in week 1. He did lose to the Saints, okay? Let's keep it real. Cam Newton didn't lose to the Dolphins, okay? We watched Thursday night. The Browns, they got boat raced by the Ravens. The Ravens are a good football team, in case you haven't noticed. But they didn't lose to the Bengals. It was closer than it should have been, although the score is a little bit closer than it really was. But they didn't lose to the Bengals. The Colts lost to the Jags, who exiled all of their best talent in the last 2-3 years. All of it's gone. And they have Gardner Minshew at quarterback, which I have to admit looks pretty good. Looks like a dude. But he's not a great quarterback, but he looks like he can play. But the fact of the matter is the Colts lost to the Jags. And for people to have picked them to win the division, go far in the playoffs, I'm just not, again, much like the Dolphins and who's the other team? The Jaguars. I don't get it. Or not the Jaguars. Who's the other team I was talking about? The Jets. What are people seeing? I'm no football executive or anything like that, but I've been watching football for quite some time. I'd like to think I know some bit about the game, and I just don't get what people see with the Colts. I don't understand it at all. I really don't. I don't trust Phillip Rivers, and I've said this about the Vikings, and I said, in fact, in my first or second podcast, I said the Colts are the Vikings of the AFC. Neither team has the playmaker. Dalvin Cook's a really good running back. He ain't any of those top 3 to 4 guys. He's not Alvin Kamara. He's not Christian McCaffrey. He's not Derrick Henry. He's not Saquon. He's not Zeke. How far, so what exactly is he? Is he a top 10 running back? I think so. I think that's fair. But like in the top 10, is he 9, 8? I don't know. Uh, and then the Colts, the same thing. Who are their? They have playmakers. Let me differentiate because that's not a good way to put it. They don't have superstars. Superstars, okay? Superstars. Uh, you don't necessarily need a bunch of superstars to win, but you need a superstar. You need one. The Patriots didn't have a bunch of superstars, but they did have one at most for 20 years. They at least had one. Even if you want to argue a lot of the cases, you know, Tom Brady is a superstar. Well, guess what? Kirk Cousins is not a superstar. I love Adam Thielen. He's not a superstar. He's a great receiver. But there's a long list of guys I would take before Adam Thielen. Same thing with Dalvin Cook. We just rattled off 5 or 6 names. I like the Colts here, or excuse me, I like the Vikings +3 at the Colts just because they're basically playing each other. It's like that Spider-Man meme. I just think the Vikings are a little bit better. So give me the Vikings +3. By the way, Jonathan Taylor is a good play here for DraftKings. Marlon Mack out. He's going to be highly owned, I'm sure, but, it's still worth it. Packers -6 at home versus the Lions. Ugh. The Lions gave up 3 touchdowns to Mitchell Trubisky last week. Kenny Golladay is out, and they're without their top 3 cornerbacks. So if you're a DraftKings player, Adam Lazard is your guy. By the way, played on 90% of the snaps last week. And in those snaps, 45% of them came from the slot, of which where Adam Lazard plays. Anthony Miller last week went 4 for 76 and a touchdown, all from the slot. Adam Lazard is your wide receiver value play for this week. Again, the Lions are just a mess. They still have Matt Patricia. They have Matt Stafford, the Matt twins. And they're the first team in 14 or 15 years to give up a 17-point lead in the fourth quarter. Something that hasn't happened in almost 20 years against Mitchell Trubisky. Nah. Give me the Packers -6. Bears +5.5 at home versus the Giants. I'd never bet on Trubisky except against the Giants. Never would do it. They got smashed offensively last week by the Steelers. Steelers defense was just suffocating the Giants. And I expect more of the same from the Bears and Khalil Mack. I just do. This game scares me, though, tremendously for 2 reasons. Mitchell Trubisky and the Steelers defense. Mitchell Trubisky is, let's face it, he's not very good. And so he could turn into Mitchell Trubisky at any point and keep the Giants in this football game. But then the other thing is the Steelers defense shut down the Giants. And so what did we really see from them offensively? We saw them move the ball. They had a 19-play drive, by the way, which for those of you who aren't necessarily familiar with all the nuances of football, 19 plays on the drive is a lot. And they didn't score. Now, it's against the Steelers. So is the Bears defense that good? No, but they're really good. Will the Giants be able to cover 5.5 points? I don't think so. They were actually not that far off last week. Things went a little haywire towards the end there. But I don't know. Week 2, maybe they take a step in the right direction. It was the first week for Joe Judge, so who knows? Maybe they have a complete bounce back game here. But 6.5 at home versus an established team, even with a bad quarterback, I'll take it. Washington +7 at the Cardinals. I don't love it with the Cardinals' new offensive line versus this Washington defensive front, which is hellacious with the new addition of Chase Young. You got Montez Sweat. But Dwayne Haskins looked far better than he did last year. And, first week is under his belt. Week 1 jitters are out. And they got to win. And so he's going to be playing confident. 7 is a lot of points, even on the road, for a defense that's this good. I think that's what's going to keep the game close. I don't think that Washington wins it. I just think the Cardinals are a better football team, but I think that defense is going to be able to keep them in it. And 7 points, I'll take Washington with the 7 points here. Pats +4 at home, at Seattle. much like the above game, Pat's getting a field goal is just for me, or Pat's getting more than a field goal is just a no-brainer to me. That they don't get blown out very often. In fact, I couldn't even tell you the last time they got blown out. Don't even remember it. The last time off the top of my head was the Chiefs when they opened with the Chiefs and it was like 41-14. I don't remember them getting blown out anytime since then. Now, I'm sure they have once or twice. I'm just not thinking of it. But that was the last time I can think of right now. I like the Pats getting the field goal. I think Seahawks get the win late. Russell Wilson, I think the Seahawks are just a better football team overall. But Bill Belichick is too good of a coach to get blown out here. And Cam Newton's too good of a quarterback. Along with this defense, I think they'll be able to score a few points. It's going to be an ugly game with the run game for both teams. Pete Carroll came out and said, yeah, Russ cooked, but we got to get back to the run game. They probably are because they want to keep that weird offense for the Pats off the field and control the clock and get it out of there. So I like the Pats +4, but I'll take Seattle to win the game. Now, I'm going to go through these pretty quickly because I think these are all going to be blowouts. I'm still picking the games, but I'm just going to blaze through these pretty quickly. Ravens -7.5 at the Texans. Hammer it. Hammer it. The Texans are just, they're going to get embarrassed this week. Let's just say that. Deshaun Watson is running for his life behind the offensive line and has no one to throw to. And defensively, they are just overmatched talent-wise. And they keep waiting for J.J. Watt to turn into J.J. Watt, and he's just not doing it. Hello, Bill O'Brien. He's not J.J. lining them up inside. J.J. Watt may as well not have played last week because that's how little he showed up on the screen. He's not J.J. Watt anymore. He's just a good player. And listen, it's not happening. The Ravens roll big time this week, and things are going to get ugly in Houston. Titans -7.5 at home versus the Jags. No A.J. Brown means a bigger dose of Derrick Henry, which I'm totally fine with. The Jags had their Super Bowl last week. Week 1, everyone's just killing them all year, tanking, Gardner Minshew's trash. They had their Super Bowl last week, and they won it. And congrats. But they're going to turn the kittens on Sunday because they are the Jaguars. And I think 1-15 to 2-14 is certainly in their future. Gardner Minshew, I like. He's going to be tough. He's no slouch at quarterback, but what else do they have? Right. By the way, Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, a great stack here for this week for DraftKings. A.J. Brown is out. I wouldn't trust the Corey Davis that we saw last week, not until I see it a few more times. I would just hold off on that. But Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, we saw them try to get Derrick Henry in the end zone on a pass play against the Broncos. Almost snuck in there. But there's been a few games where Tannehill went off for 30-plus points, and so did Derrick Henry. It's not one or the other with those guys. So I like that stack this week against the Jags. Chiefs -8.5 at the Chargers. Chargers have Tyrod Taylor, and the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes. It is that simple. He's not going to be able to keep up with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs scoring-wise. Not on his best day, okay? Their defense is missing Derwin James, which is unfortunate. I love watching him play. And while they do have a solid pass rush, this is not a rookie Patrick Mahomes or some slouch at quarterback. These are the defending Super Bowl champs, and it is for a reason that they are the defending Super Bowl champs. They are far, far better than the Bengals, and the Chargers should have lost to the Bengals, quite frankly, with the missed throw from Burrow to A.J. Green for the touchdown and the field goal at the end. Probably should have won that game, but they didn't. It is what it is. Love the Chiefs here, -8.5 at the Chargers. And the Saints and the Raiders. The Raiders beat the Panthers. That's great. Panthers defense is maybe the worst in football, and now they're about to go play potentially the best, at least in the NFC. You could argue the best in football. I would probably disagree, but there's a case to be made. The Raiders are actually going against a defense this week, and they have Derek Carr at quarterback. So this is not going to be good. -5.5, I think that's too low. And especially if Michael Thomas plays, he may or may not play, yet to be decided. Doesn't matter as far as me picking the game, but if he does, this is a sure bet to me for the blowout here. All right, guys, and that will do it for the picks. That will do it for this episode of the Simple Sports Podcast. As I said at the top, please be sure to like and subscribe, especially if you're on YouTube. If you are downloading the podcast elsewhere, maybe Anchor, Google Podcasts, please download and subscribe. It would really help me out. Go out there and make some money. We'll be back on Monday to talk about what we saw coming up tomorrow. And to also talk about the Monday night DraftKings showdown, Raiders and the Saints. Talk a little bit about what we're going to expect for Thursday night game. And who knows what else we'll talk about. You have to show up on Monday to find out. It's been your boy Capo. I will see you all in the next episode. Peace.